Hello and welcome to Synth and Sundry. Today it's going to be a little bit of a different video. I was recently looking through some old photos of mine from when I lived in Paris in the early 2000s. I went out a fair amount, experienced a lot of the nightlife, and I had my camera at the time with me. I no longer have that camera, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, but I wanted to share some pictures with you and talk a little bit about the artists featured on them that I photographed. So let's get started. The first band I'm going to talk about is Electrocute. They were a electro-pop duo made up of Nicole Morier, the founding member of the act, and Holly Herndon, who stepped in for the tour where I took pictures of them. And I took pictures of them a couple of times because they played in Paris a few times. The pictures that I'm showing you are from the time that they played at the Nouveau Casino, which was a mid-sized venue. They put out one album on Emperor Norton Records and an EP before that as well. Some of their tracks made it onto movies. One of them, called a single of theirs called Kleiner Dicke Junge, was in a French movie called De battre mon cœur s'est arrêté. And then also, funnily enough, they had another track on a SpongeBob movie from before 2010 as well. Some cursory internet research shows me that after Electrocute wrapped up, Nicole went into songwriting and worked with some pretty high-profile pop stars, including Britney Spears, I think. And then Holly Herndon went on to do some postgraduate studies, has released so far, I think, a couple of albums of experimental electronic music, including some electronic music composed with the aid of machine learning. So generally, when I was shooting Nightlife, concerts, DJ sets, I used slow sync flash on the camera. This was one of the flash options that I had available. And I used that because it had a good balance between freezing motion and maintaining the ambience. The EVF of the camera that I had was pretty poor in low light conditions, so I often would use the venue lighting as a point of reference in terms of framing my subject. So I would try to line up the stage lighting to the top or a corner, and then in relation to that I would roughly judge where my subject was and then take the shot that way. This next band is Laurence Wasser, and I shot them in Liège, in Belgium. I also saw them several times in Paris, but these pictures are from the Liège gig. This first picture is actually from the end of their performance, just the drum kit, very much inspired by Einstürzende Neubauten. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but with the extra pieces of metal for percussive effect. And it was a pretty short performance from what I remember. They played maybe for between 20 to 30 minutes and then just abruptly ended the set. The band is fronted by Laurence Wasser, and even though they went through different iterations with different members and different configurations, he's been always the front man, and he continues to make music to this day, as far as I'm aware. This, though, I believe was the earliest iteration, and you had a guitar, bass, keyboard, and drums and percussion player. I think percussion was shared at that time between the keyboard player and the drummer. And interestingly, in several of the gigs that I saw them play, they actually rotated through the instruments to play different songs. In terms of musical style, they very much rode that post-punk wave of the early 2000s, but really injected no-wave and rockabilly influences, as well as, this might sound a bit weird, but also some easy listening in there. It was a real mixture of influences. As far as I'm aware, the band never really broke up. They went through different phases, with members coming in and out. But since it was fronted by Laurence, or Laurent, he was really the focal point. and the main creative force as far as I'm aware. So he continued to make music, and I still think he does to this day, though he moved away from France and spent some time in the US, and he might still be there, I think, in California. And there's definitely music online to check out, both from the earlier side of the band to the more recent projects. Now, this is the moment you might have been waiting for. What did I take these pictures with? Well, it was the early 2000s. After I finished university, I was gifted a camera by my parents. And so that's what I took to Paris with me. And it was a Fuji FinePix 2800 zoom. And I'll put a picture up so you can see what it looks like. But it was basically, it's called a bridge camera. So essentially it was a consumer camera with an optical zoom lens. And let's go through some of the specs, because I mean, they're going to blow you away. So we start off with a 2 megapixel sensor. That means that it could shoot images up to 1600 by 1200 in JPEG format. No RAW here, we don't need that. And it stored those images onto a 16 megabyte, because it came with a memory card, but no SD here. Definitely at the time, it was all about smart media, which was a sort of thinner card format. I'll try and again put a picture up to show you what it looked like. The lens that you had was an f2.8 to 3 zoom lens that went from 38 millimeter to 220 millimeter in terms of equivalent to full frame. I think it was a 6 times zoom. That's what it was advertised as. Now, for maximum image quality, ISO was capped at 100, so no issues with high noise at high ISO values there. It was a welcome limitation. I've already touched on the storage format. So often I would have to go down to 640 by 480 VGA resolution to get a few more images in. And then there was also an intermediate resolution between the two. So it's good that I'm shooting this video in HD on a Fuji X-E2 because the images don't really go much beyond that. Now, this camera wasn't just for pictures, it also took video. And there's some blistering video specs, let me tell you, that would put even, I don't think a full-frame camera today can even touch them. We're talking here 320 by 240 resolution video at 10 frames per second with sound and a 60-second recording limit. No overheating problems there. I hope that you've enjoyed this video and the photos that I shared. If you'd like to see more photos from when I was shooting Nightlife, leave a comment below, as well as if you have any questions. Subscribe, and I'll see you next time.